Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Lady Gregory's play, The Rising of the Moon. This is a 1907 Irish nationalist play, short play, a one-act, and it is somewhat similar to the play that Lady Gregory wrote with W.B. Yeats, William Butler Yeats, called Cathleen, Houlihan, which I did a video about recently. Both of these plays are set during the 1798 rebellion, which was a major incident in Irish history, still regarded by Irish people as a crucial year for the cause of Irish liberty, Irish nationalism, and Irish freedom from British rule. Whereas Cathleen Houlihan is set at the beginning of the 1798 rebellion and sees Michael go off to fight in the uprising. The Rising of the Moon is set sort of middle or after the rebellion itself, and basically we have this sergeant and these two police officers who are on the lookout for a rebel that has escaped from captivity. He's wanted. There's a large reward for him, and the police figure that there would also be a promotion in it if they actually were the ones to catch this man. So the sergeant, they're putting up these posters, these wanted posters, basically, and the sergeant identifies this one spot on this boardwalk is the term that's in my head, but I don't think that's quite right. This sort of pier, right? The waterfront area, because there's some stairs that lead down to a quay where a boat could be brought up to help this escaped prisoner get away. And so the sergeant figures this is a pretty good place to set up a watch to make sure that this guy doesn't slip past. So he takes that spot and he sends the other two police down to put up more wanted posters. So he's sitting around, the sergeant is sitting around, when this poor ballad seller comes along and tries to go down the stairs. And the sergeant stops him, basically says, nobody's allowed to go down those stairs. What are you doing here? And the guy's like, I just wanted to go sell some ballads to sailors. And the sergeant is basically stops him and just says, you're not allowed to. Get out of here. And at one point, there is this great line from this poor ballad seller where he says, oh, very well, it's a hard thing to be poor. All the world's against the poor. And so there definitely is this social consciousness to the play. There is this social awareness to the play, but that's not its primary focus, although that is definitely tied into the radical nationalist politics of the play, because the native Irish, particularly Irish Catholics, were much more likely to be impoverished under English rule or British rule than their Anglo-Irish neighbors. The Anglo-Irish, that is people who were English, Norman, or Saxon descended and had come to Ireland as part of the colonial occupation, they were much more likely to be well off. They were also much more likely to be Protestant, particularly Anglicans. The largely Presbyterian Scots-Irish, mostly lowland Scots, but some Highlanders as well, who primarily were concentrated in Ulster, in what's now Northern Ireland, they were much more of a mixed bag. You had a lot of poor Presbyterians, a lot of poor Scots-Irish, And you had a lot, and you had a smaller number of sort of wealthier landowners and things like this. And actually, that was one of the things with the 1798 Rising that was fairly unique, was that it brought together Protestants and Catholics to rise against British rule, in part because the English, especially Anglo-Normans, or the Anglo-Irish, were very much financially dispossessing the native Irish and the Scots-Irish. But that's not, again, the real main central point of the Rising of the Moon. So this ballad seller comes along, and he and the sergeant are chatting for a little bit, and the sergeant basically is like, "Get out of here, you're distracting me." And the ballad seller's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go because fucking this dude that you're on the lookout for, he will murder you like nobody's business, and I don't want to be around for that." And the sergeant's like, "Wait, what? No, I didn't." And so basically, the beggar ends up sort of sitting back to back with this sergeant on the lookout for this guy, ostensibly under the premise that they don't want the escaped rebel to be able to sneak up on the sergeant from behind and kill him before making his escape. And they're basically just sort of chatting, right? They're having a nice little palaver between the two of them. And the ballad singer starts sort of singing bits and pieces of songs, particularly of traditional Irish songs or Irish nationalist songs in some instances. And at one point, the sergeant basically says, "You missed a line out of that one." And the man says, "But to think of a man like you knowing a song like that." And this is, I think, one of the most interesting bits of the play. So this is a sort of extended bit, but I'm going to read this one. So the sergeant says, "There's many a thing a man might know and might not have any wish for." The man says, "Now I dare say, Sergeant, in your youth you used to be sitting up on a wall the way you're sitting up on this barrel now, and the other lads beside you and singing Granui." I don't know the proper Irish pronunciation of these words. I'm going to give it my best shot, but Irish is one of those languages that for an Anglophone speaker just has a ton of letters that don't sound at all the way they sound in English. So my pronunciation is going to be horrible. I apologize. If you know the proper pronunciation of these things, please put it in the comments. I love to know those things. The sergeant says, "I did then." The man says, "And the Shanbin Bro?" Sergeant says, "I did then." And the man says, and the green of the Cape?" The sergeant says, "That was one of them." And the man says, "And maybe the man you're watching for tonight used to be sitting on the wall when he was young and singing those same songs. It's a queer world." The sergeant says, "Whist, I think I see something coming. It's only a dog." The man says, "And isn't it a queer world? Maybe it's one of the boys you used to be singing with that time you will be arresting today or tomorrow and sending into the dock." The sergeant says, "That's true indeed." And the man says, "And maybe one night after you had been singing, if the other boys had told you some plan they had, some plan to free the country, you might have joined with them. And maybe it is you might be in trouble now." And the sergeant says, "Well, who knows but I might. I had a great spirit in those days." The man says, "It's a queer world, Sergeant, and it's little any mother knows when she sees her child creeping on the floor what might happen to it before it had gone through life, or who he will be in the end." And Sergeant says, "That's a queer thought now, and a true thought. Wait now till I think it out. If it wasn't for the sense I have, and for my wife and family, and for me joining the force the time I did, it might be myself now would be after break in jail and hiding in the dark, and it might be him that's hiding in the dark, and it might be him that's hiding in the dark, and that got out of the... Give me just a second here. All right. If it wasn't for the sense I have, and for my wife and family, and for me joining the force the time I did, it might be meself now would be after breaking jail and hiding in the dark, and it might be him that's hiding in the dark, and that got out of jail would be sitting up where I am on this barrel. And it might be meself would be creeping up, trying to make my escape from himself. And it might be himself would be keeping the law, and myself would be breaking it, and myself would be trying maybe to put a bullet in his head, or to take up a lump of stone the way you said he did. No, that myself did. Oh. So I think this is a really fascinating bit of the play, because essentially what this man has done, and it turns out that this man is the escape rebel, and he ends up basically asking this police sergeant when the other two went. So the man's boat arrives, and then the two other police officers come back, and basically this rebel asks this sergeant, who is sitting here waiting to capture him and collect this reward and get this promotion, basically, for the sake of the times that you sat on a wall as a young man and sang these Irish songs, will you help me escape? And the sergeant does. And I actually think it's a brilliant approach to making the Irish nationalist argument, because one of the main ways that the British maintained control in colonial Ireland was the Royal Irish Constabulary, which later sort of morphed into the Royal Ulster Constabulary, particularly after 1922, when Ireland was split between what would become the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, which remained in the United Kingdom. So the Royal Irish Constabulary was largely peopled by Irishmen, and possibly Irish women. I don't know when women sort of entered police services. But the Royal Irish Constabulary was a sort of indigenous police force. And this is a very common thing. The British set these up throughout the British Empire. They would use local people, they would use natives of the country to serve in the police in an attempt, A, to save on having to send actual British people from the United Kingdom over to serve in these police forces, and B, to try and sort of maintain order and get local people who might resist a British police officer to identify more with the police service. And so what Lady Gregory is doing here is basically she is using this character's appeal to the sergeant's patriotism and love of Ireland to implicitly say, hey, Irish people who are in the service of the British, whether that's as members of the Royal Irish Constabulary, whether that's administrative roles, working for the British Postal Service or clerking for British courts, whatever it is, you can use your positions in these subtle ways to resist British imperialism and to support the cause of your own country. And I think it really is quite an effective technique, a rhetorically effective technique. At the same time, we do have something similar on a sort of ethical level to what we saw with Cathleen Houlihan, where very much the idea of sacrificing for Ireland, of laying down your life, of not abandoning, but going away from your family in order to fight for the nation. this is valorized. The positive thing that the sergeant does here is he gives up this very large reward and the possibility of promotion, which means that he has also given those things up on behalf of his family, right? His family does not get that money. His family does not get the higher salary that would come with promotion, etc., etc. And so, again, there is this sort of sense of glamorizing or valorizing or idealizing sacrifice for the cause of the nation. And that's pretty prolific throughout Irish anti-imperialist writing. It also has and I talked about this in my video on Cathleen and Houlihan, it also has the potential negative impact of getting a lot of people to be willing to die whether or not the objective of Irish independence is achieved. And this is ethically a gray area for me.